Welcome back to Puddle of Porridge, where today we're going to be covering the next Elementalist training wheels build, building up on what we established in the core video once again. This one's going to be a little bit different though. See, the catalyst is quite flexible with what we want to do with this build, so I'm actually going to split this into two. And I'll go over what this build's specifically going to cover when we get up to the skills and traits section of the build. But this one is going to be the longer one because we're going to go through a lot more of the basics of the catalyst as an elite spec. So without further ado, we'll head over to the Lines Arch Arena in a little bit. I'm also going to do a little bit longer of an outro for those interested in why this video took so long to make. So if you're interested in that stuff and have been actually following my stuff, I know you're out there, then stick around at the end and I'll cover why this video took so long to come out. Alright, so let's head on over to Lines Arch. Here we are in the training area, so let's kind of cover the basics of the catalyst and then we'll get into what this build can do. So the core of the catalyst, our End of Dragon's elite spec, is its Jade Sphere. The Jade Sphere is this ability here. It is our F5. Basically this is a ground targeted ability that does a little tiny bit of damage when applied to an enemy. It gives us a combo field and provides a boon. So it's a very nice all-rounder ability. You can slot it into most builds that you're gonna run, whether that's supportive or, well, DPS, whatever. Very handy. Now, what you need to lock into your brain is which attunements are best for which Jade Sphere, because they all do different things. I split this into two categories: our offensive Jade Spheres, aka fire attunement and air attunement. So if you look on fire here, we have might, and if we look on air, we have fury, both boons that help us deal more damage. The other two, water and earth, I place in the support category, because if we look on water, we get resolution, which is a reduction to condi damage, and a water field, which can be comboed nicely into a lot of healing abilities. And if we look on earth, we have protection, nice damage reduction, and a poison field, which helps us dish out some condis, including some nice debuffs if you combo that correctly. So that's a nice supportive circle in your water and earth, and obviously an offensive circle in your fire and air. Now that we've got that down, let's have a quick look at what skills we're going to use and have a little bit of a conversation about what weapons we'll use for this build. So our skills are as they were in core. They are our two summoning glyphs up here because we just want to summon our minions. They're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Very good for solo play. Our healing ability is whichever one you are the most comfortable with. If you want to, you can use our elite spec one. I like the signet when I'm using our scepter, as the amount of attacks you're dishing out with scepter is actually going to help keep your health up high enough in most situations. But if you're using staff, you might want to swap that out. Now the specific skills that we're going to use here are always up to you. I always like to use the elite spec skills because it means that we're getting to learn our elite spec. The elite spec skills for Catalyst work in a particular way. They're called augments, and basically they will just do what the skill says. But if you use it within the Jade Sphere radius on the appropriate attunement, then you get an additional bonus. So if we look up here on my stun break, I have Invigorating Air. That gives us an increased endurance regeneration and super speed, as well as the stun break. But if we cast it while in the air sphere, we get a reduced recharge time. So I'll just demo that very quickly. If we look here, we're going to be in air attunement here. So I'll just cast it without it. And there we go. We got our whole 30 seconds to wait. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down our Jade Sphere. And I'll cast it again. Look at that. 20 seconds. It knocks a whole 10 seconds off the recharge time. Very handy if you can get that comboed up together. But when you're just starting out, do not worry about it. Okay? So let's have a quick convo about the weapons. Right, so weapons. As per usual, we have our staff and our offhand, but we'll ignore that for the minute because I want to talk about Scepter Focus first. And if you look here, we have Hammer highlighted, which is the Elite Spec signature weapon. It was the weapon that came out with the expansion that gave us the Catalyst. Now, the reason why I don't have the hammer equipped, but it is still a viable option, is because this build requires you to combo quite a lot. So we need to combo off our combo fields with combo finishes. Now, we do have some access to combo finishes with various skills with the Scepter. Not a lot of them, but we do have an important one that will allow us to trigger quite a lot passively. With Hammer, we don't have any on skill 1, and it's kind of limited in the higher up, so our skill 1 and 2s are not very helpful to us. Our skill 3 is very helpful for this build, as when you cast this ability, if you press that button again, it will fire off a projectile finisher. Very, very handy. And our skills 4 and 5, depending on the attunement, can vary in its usefulness. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but so is Scepter Focus. But Scepter Focus has a little bit more reliability with what we need for this build, and it'll kind of all start to slot into place when we talk about the traits and when I demo this build later on. So let's get to those traits. So for this first Catalyst build, we're just using the first row of traits. Simply because these are just going to be the first ones that you unlock when you are playing Catalyst, and they do combo quite well with the core Elementalist build that we discussed in the earlier video. This doesn't mean that it's any better or any worse than the build that's coming in part 2. It's just I wanted to put this one first because you're probably going to encounter these traits first. And more importantly, I do think it's a much better buffer between core Ellie and core Catalyst mechanics, because we're dealing less with the use of the Jade Sphere, though we are using it for a very particular reason. We'll be using the Jade Sphere specifically for the combo fields that it provides, and it'll all start to make sense in a moment when I go over the traits and how they interact. So let's look at our chosen traits first, our 3 chosen traits, this nice top row. So that's Hardened Auras, which is very simple. We get a 2% decrease to incoming damage. Very handy. This stacks up to 5, which gives us a 10% decrease to damage. This also stacks with things like protection, so you can actually get a nice amount of damage reduction as long as you have Hardened Auras on yourself. Next up is Empowering Auras. Empowering Auras is the offensive version of Hardened Auras, and that gives us a damage increase. Once again, only 2%, but stacks up to 5, which gives us a 10% increase to damage and Condi damage. They're very simple and things you can kind of have on the back of your mind while you're rotating through the important skills for this build. And finally, I don't think this last one matters as much as the first two, is Staunch Auras. Now, we have that because we're using a lot of auras here, and it's just kind of handy to have extra stability. It's going to keep us on our feet, especially because End of Dragons, I think, has a lot of knockdown enemies. They have a lot of CCs that they like to throw out. So having stability on yourself, not going to hurt. But if you want to swap that out for another trait in this trait line, feel free to do so. Next, we're going to talk about these two here, those locked-in traits that we have no control over. That's Elemental Empowerment. This one's very simple. It's a 3% stat buff to all of our stats. It's only small, but we get 10 stacks of it, which basically gives us an extra 1% increase per stack. Now, these buffs all interact, so we're actually getting an increase to both our offensive and defensive capabilities here, only by a small margin, but it's there. So basically, when you're running around with Catalyst, you're instantly gonna be a bit stronger than a regular Elementalist is anyway. Next is Elemental Epitome, which is going to tie a nice neat little bow on this build. Normally I kind of ignore this when I'm running around as Catalyst, but for this, whenever I'm running this build, it just all clicks into place and is just really nice. Normally, when you want an aura, you have to apply the appropriate combo finisher to the appropriate combo field. With this trait, it gives you a combo freebie. Basically, we perform a combo finisher, and whatever attunement we're in, we gain an appropriate aura based on that attunement. So, say we are in fire attunement, we will get a fire aura as long as we have finished the combo in our fire attunement, right? It doesn't matter anything else that's going on. This means we kind of have a reliable way of applying certain auras to ourselves as long as we have a combo finisher. The specific combo finisher no longer matters, and we still get the benefit of that combo finisher regardless of what that finisher is. And we gain a stack of Elemental Empowerment every time we grant an aura. And that applies whether we apply that aura with this method or with a traditional method as well. So all of this kind of lines up together. So we are gaining a stat increase with our auras with an additional Elemental Empowerment, and we're also getting these stat increases as well. All very nice. We'll discuss the downsides to that in a moment when we do the demo, but it's something that we can just kind of fire and forget, work on our auras, work on buffing ourselves, our minions are still doing damage. This is something that can be as passive or as active as you like while playing Catalyst. The only thing I'd add to this is if you really want to take advantage of your auras, if we remember back to the original Elementalist video, we did discuss the possibility of using smothering auras in our fire trait lines. Now, normally you would only get a little bit of a bonus out of this. If you don't mind lowering your power a little bit, smothering auras is actually really great for this build, because it means we're just applying all of these auras to ourselves as often as possible, and every time we do, those auras are getting rid of condition damage, and as we all know, conditions can be very annoying in the open world. So I do recommend moving into smothering auras if you're having a lot of trouble with particularly a lot of soft CC conditions like cripple and chill, or even confusion, because that can be annoying when you're running about in the open world as well. So we're dishing out so many auras with this build that having smothering auras is going to be really handy. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want that, there's always power overwhelming. That's always our standard, but smothering auras works wonderfully here. So without going and waffling it anymore, let's have a little look at how this will actually work in combat. So here's our usual golem, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo this quite briefly without the minions. Because as we know, these minions are just going to chip away at that little cat golem. In fact, I'll just summon one as an example, and it can do its thing. It can just chip away at the health, just as a background thing. But I'd really like to demo the first part, which is obviously our scepter focus, and then later on we'll have a look at staff, but we'll just see how this build works in action. So let's start hitting the golem. As per usual, we're building up that might. We summon our minion as our little example. It'll go over, it'll do a little bit more damage. It's our regular golem as well. It does have a defiance bar. Obviously we're not doing any damage to that defiance bar right now. And as per usual, we're back up on max might. We've not had to do anything, which means I probably wouldn't waste the Jade Sphere here. We don't need any more might. So what's our next step? Well, our next step is we're going to apply Fire Shield. And if we look, we've buffed ourselves with another Elemental Empowerment, given ourselves the Hardened Auras. Very handy. So I'm going to reload the skills because I want to do a quick combo. So if we Fire Shield, Flame Wall, and then blast that down, we've got another aura up already. So that's 2 of our passive aura buffs. Very simple. Now what we'd usually like to do is switch over to another attune, but you're going to start seeing the problems with using Scepter here, and it's a similar problem with Hammer. Now Hammer can reliably provide the skill 3 combo field in all attunements. That's the advantage of Hammer, but we're going to be missing out on a quick fire shield in fire attunement, which if we're trying to build our might up quickly as well, this combo here does help us build that up as well. So just keep that in mind. If we shift over to water, we don't have a whole lot going on in terms of combo fields. This Comet here, very unreliable, not the best. Once again, in air with Scepter, also not the best. Earth, on the other hand, Earth's where it's at. Because if we look down here, we have 2 very reliable combos. So we can apply Rock Barrier to ourselves, and we can fire those rocks through the barrier, and our skill 1 is an occasional combo finisher as well. So I'll just demo that by applying the combo field. And there we go. We've comboed, we've got the aura, and we can always swap back to fire. As we've swapped back to fire, we are now building up those fields. And that's all what is this build. As we are comboing these auras together, we are keeping our minions out. Those minions are doing damage, and eventually will chip down the health of most things in the game fairly safely. And that's it. It does shift a bit when we go over to staff though, and we'll have a look at staff now. Now we're in a similar boat with staff that we were in Scepter, in that some of our skill lines are gonna really not be very combo friendly, but others will be very combo friendly. And we still have one instant access aura, which means we'll always have an in the pocket. We fire this aura off, we get all the bonuses that we like. Here's the thing, we still need to be in fire attunement to get the benefits of this trait here. One that's going to give us all of the might, thus increasing all of our damage. So we do always want to start in fire whenever we can. Obviously I'm going to just start the auto attack here, and you're going to notice our might's going to start building up. But if we look at our fire skills, we don't really have a finisher in fire, which is a problem because we have 2 fire fields, well 3 fire fields if you include Burning Retreat, which is a little bit harder to pull off. Well, not harder to pull off, but like, it's not most people's go-to combo field. We have nothing to combo off. We're kind of stuck here. We're just using this to build up might and nothing else. Whereas with Scepter, we did have a little bit of capabilities of comboing off ourselves, moving on, and then moving back into fire attunement, comboing off ourselves as we're building up our might, and so on. We have this slow might build up with staff. It doesn't seem that interesting, but where it does get interesting is when we switch attunement. So if we move over to, say, water, we now have a whole bunch of combo fields. So we not only have our Jade Sphere, but these 3 skills here are combo fields. We've got 2 waters and an ice, and in addition to the Jade Sphere water field. But we also have a blast finisher. Very handy to have in our back pocket, which means that we now get an aura from our water attunement. And I'll just demo that quickly with a quick geyser and then an ice spike. There we go. We got a healing aura and the frost aura as well. So a nice area heal and the ice spike, which demonstrates what I discussed earlier. We still get the bonuses of that combo. Move over into air. Same problem as before. We have the combo fields, but not the finisher, which is where our old friend Earth is going to come in. See, Earth is really good here because it has a whole bunch of combo finishes. It has a blast finisher, its auto attack is a projectile finisher, and its skill 5 is a projectile finisher. So what we can often do with this build is build up our might in fire attunement and then switch over to water or earth, drop down those auras and then shift back to fire. That's our rotation here. Keep in mind with earth as well, we also have the bonus of having a magnetic aura that we can just trigger. So I'll just demo this quite quickly. We'll build up our might again. I'm going to summon one of our minions. I'll summon the big minion as well. We're building up that might. We're building up that might. We're going to swap over when we get to around... Oh, now, actually, as we're hitting around about 20 might. We're going to swap over to water attunement. Drop down a geyser. Swap over to earth. Drop down that jade sphere. Trigger that. And we'll swap back to fire. Build up the might once again. And by the time we've done that, we can switch back over to water. Ice spike. Once that's triggered, move over to earth. And we can drop down our jade sphere, which is going to give us another magnetic aura. We trigger another magnetic aura and back over to fire. And that's it. We're going to keep ourselves around about 4 stacks of both of those if we just keep doing that. And that's it. That's the build. The only thing of note, right, is if we're in earth attunement, this skill here, the Blast Finisher Eruption, is a bit tricky to combo off of. So if you want to use that, you have to cast it before you cast your combo finisher. So you can't swap from another attunement and just drop that down quick and try and combo quick with another field. That's not going to really work. That's where the auto attack's going to come in. If you want to do that one specifically, say where you're moving over from fire attunement straight into earth, and this is the first one you want to combo off of, you want to drop down your jade sphere and your eruption, but you're going to want to drop eruption first. So I'm going to just show this now if you do it the way most people do it. So if you do the jade sphere and then eruption, the eruption has a delay, right? It's not going to trigger. Whereas if you go eruption first and then the jade sphere, then it procs afterwards. It's a little thing you've got to keep in the back of your mind. You're not going to really use that much because your auto attack is just going to trigger the projectile finisher anyway. And obviously you have the magnetic aura that you can proc. So you've got 2 sources here. You're not really going to be worrying about blast unless you really want to use that blast finisher. But just keep that in mind when you're trying to combo with eruption. So before we wrap up, I just want to do a quick demo with hammer. Because although I do think that scepter focus is much better for beginners, if you want to try hammer, feel a little bit more comfortable with the build, you're not feeling staff, you're not feeling scepter focus, you don't want to go back to core early weapons, you want to try something new, hammer is kind of the way to go. But I don't think it's a very beginner friendly weapon, and I'll go over why now, particularly with this aura stuff. The main reason is that if we look at our skill 1, it is 600 on fire, but if we switch to water, it's 130. Really short range weapon. So we go from a medium to a short range weapon, and you have to learn which attunements are which. If you were paying attention earlier, your offensive attunements, your fire and air, those are gonna be your mid-range weapons. Those are the 600 range, and your support attunements are water and earth. They have the 120. So if you're in your support attunement, you want to be closer. If you're in your offensive attunement, you can step back a little bit. So let's engage with this golem, and you'll see the first advantage of using hammer. First advantage is it actually attacks very quickly for such a weighty weapon. Most hammers attack slow in this game. Your Elementalist fire hammer attacks quite quick. Like, you can have a look down here and see how quickly we're building up that might. We're nearly on 25 might already. So we're ready to start demoing the auras. So the thing with auras, with the hammer, is we're in kind of the same position as with our other weapons, except we don't have an instant aura. We have one ability that's going to give us auras, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but all of our auras are going to come from combos. Which means the best way to play this is to switch to an attunement, launch a combo, switch out of the attunement, launch the next combo, and if you can get into a rhythm of that, you can actually keep your passive aura abilities up fairly consistently. So let's just do a quick run through of where we're going to get our combos from. So our combos are largely going to come from skill 5s. So in all of these, your skill 5 is probably going to have a finish. It's usually blast, sometimes it's a whirl. Skill 4 sometimes has a combo finisher. In fire, it doesn't. Our skill 3 has a projectile finisher, but I'll demo that after we do the skill 5. So I'll just show you a basic rotation with this. So we move into, say, water, and we want to get up close, but we drop our water field down and we activate skill 5 and we have a whirl. Then we move on over to air, drop the field, blast finisher, into earth, drop the field, blast finisher. And it's that simple. As long as we keep rotating back to fire to build that might up, we can do these in any order we like. It's really gonna be up to you. In fact, if you want to, you can just flick between your 600 range abilities and be done with it. You can flick between air and fire quite consistently and keep that DPS up. The issue with that is you're not going to quite get as many auras going, which is going to hamper the rest of the build, but if you don't want to worry about, don't worry about that. In Earth, we have our one aura ability, and it's a block. So we activate this ability, and whatever attunement we're in, when we get hit with this ability active, we will gain an aura based around it. It's that simple. The thing is, we've got to get hit, so I can't demo it on this golem, and it's not really worth me going out in the open. One shield ability. It's going to add an additional aura to our arsenal. If you can time it well, it's going to give you the same buffs as before. The other thing we have to think about is our skill 3. Now, skill 3 works a little bit different. We click it, we get this little thing zipping round. It does a bit of bleed damage, and it does a little bit of damage every time it passes through target. And if we click it again with Grand Finale, that will fire forward, and that counts as a projectile finisher, and that's available on all attunements. So what you can do is every time you shift, you can activate this and you can fire it through your combo field from your Jade Sphere. As you've probably noticed, we actually don't have a lot of combo fields coming from the hammer. It's all the combo finishes on our skills 4 and 5. Another thing to remember is in water, you can actually trigger 2 combo fields here. So if we use our sphere and then combo with the whirl, we have a nice little combo finisher there. But if we use leap, that'll also give us an aura. That is what is intended. So if we get into that, we gain a frost aura, and our skill 4 is a leap and a heal. So it's a nice one to keep in your back pocket. Now, ideally, what you want to also do is, as I said, you want to build up these little spinny things from our skill 3. Keep these up. We can get a bigger Grand Finale. We can enter back into fire, drop down the sphere, We can launch them through, do a big load of damage, and we got an aura. This might seem a bit clunky. It's a lot of things to juggle around, but it does work when you get the hang of it. It's just getting the hang of it, which is once again why I still recommend Scepter Focus Staff over the Hammer for this build in particular. And that's part 1 of our Catalyst Training Wheels build. Now, I hope you join us for part 2, where we're gonna kind of cover some stuff that you'll unlock later, but is a very useful and powerful, well, not powerful, but useful build to have in your back pocket while playing as a Catalyst. If this is all you wanted from a build video, then I hope this video has satisfied your interests and curiosities, and I thank you very much for watching. And if not, if you want that little bit more, once again, part 2 coming soon. For those who stuck around through the big long gap in content, thank you very much, and I apologize for it being such a big gap. I was sick a lot at the end of last year, and I was trying to figure out what was wrong with these audio issues. A lot of feedback was telling me, hey, your videos are very quiet. Hey, here's an audio issue here. A lot of very helpful advice. It took me ages to figure out what was going on. I managed to try out some new stuff. If this video goes up, obviously those should be fixed. Won't be as quiet as it used to be. I'm still kind of tweaking some settings. But once again, thank you for everyone that's given me feedback. And as per usual, if you have any more about the audio or even the video content, down below in the comments, just leave me a little comment, and I'm always open to new criticism and new feedback. Thanks again for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in part 2.